All right, the next thing that we're going to create and use dynamics to sort of animate is a little ball and chain situation, sort of like a little bit of a pendulum with a ball at the end of a chain. So the first thing that we need to do is build a chain, and I'm going to do it out of toruses. I'm going to use NURBS, I think, this time, and I'm just going to rotate this torus up 90 degrees so it's sort of up and down. I'm also going to make this quite a lot thinner. So here in the inputs, I'm going to take this height ratio down to 0.1 so it's nice and thin. This is going to be the ring that anchors my chain, and then I'm going to use this to create the links in the chain right now. So I'm just going to duplicate this, pull this down, and then I'm going to shrink this down a little and stretch it out so it's more like a longer link in a chain, and then maybe shrink it again. And then I'll pull this down a little farther, and then I'm just going to make a few copies of this. Maybe 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links in the chain. And now what I'm going to do is, because right now everything's all intersecting, and that's not what we want, that's really something to be careful of, is not only do we not want them to intersect, we really don't want the geometry to touch at all when we're doing rigid bodies. So you got to be really careful about that. I'm going to take these 3 right here and rotate them 90 degrees on the x-axis. And now you can see no geometry is touching anywhere. That's really important, because if it's touching when you go to create your rigid bodies, you'll get what's called interpenetration errors, and it's just like if the normals are facing the wrong way. You'll have things sticking and flying through things they shouldn't and things like that, and it just doesn't really work. So you just want to make sure of that. So this is my chain. I'm going to make this first ring a passive rigid body, and that's going to anchor everything, because that's sort of what passive rigid bodies do. They don't move themselves, but they react to the other dynamic objects around them. But the active rigid bodies will act on things and have forces moving them and that sort of thing. So we'll anchor that with this. We'll make it passive. And then I'm going to tear this off. And these others, I need to do them one at a time, so they'll behave separately. But I'm going to make them all active rigid bodies. Make sure that you don't get these confused and accidentally click passive, or you'll have a ring that's stuck in your chain. And just go along and make these all active. And now I will select all my chain links here, the active ones, put some gravity on there. And then when I play this, they should all fall into place. Just like that. There we go. Now we're going to need a lot more time here. I'm going to say maybe 20 seconds. So that's 480 frames. You know what? Let's make it 10 seconds just to be sure. We can always make it longer. So that's our chain right there. Now we don't really want it to start all the way up here like this, because that's not really what chains look like ever. So what we can do is go to about, let it play until it falls and it's at a place where you kind of like it, like that. Then we can select all these, and we can go up here where it says solvers, go initial state, set for selected. And what that will do is take wherever it is right here on frame 40, like this, that's going to make the beginning frame. So it doesn't have to do that falling into place and then landing. It'll start out like we want it. So let's do that. And now we've got our, and you can see them sort of move a little still because they're acting with gravity, but they start out already stretched out like we want them. So now what we need to do is to put our ball at the end. So I'm going to make NURB sphere, pull this down to the end. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. And then again, we're not touching this bottom of the ball here, but we're getting close to it. And then what we need to do is we're going to use a pin constraint to pin this to the chain. And theoretically, what that should do is create a rigid body out of it as well. So we'll select this. We'll select this here. go up to, let's see, animation, over here in the animation menu set, constrain. Let's actually go back to dynamics because I bet there's something in here. Here we are, create pin constraint. That's right, so it is going to be in the dynamics menu set under soft and rigid bodies. Create pin constraint. There's two sets of constraints, and so I got a bit confused. Now then, you can see this is a rigid body 2 now. So it's going to have, you know, all the same things. It's not going to really move a lot, but it's sort of pinned to that. We might need to connect it to the gravity. Let's go ahead and see if we need to do that. So you're going to go up to Windows, Settings and Preferences, and we're going to look in something called, actually we're going to go in Relationship Editors, and we're going to look in the Dynamic Relationships. And this is a place where if you have created a field or you created something after you created a field and it's not connected, this is how we can connect it. So we just have to make sure. See, if we look at all these toruses, they're all connected to the gravity because whenever we select it, it highlights, except for this first one because it's passive. But this sphere is not. So we need to just highlight this sphere, and now that ball is going to be affected by gravity too. So now you can see it start to move a little bit better. So that's another way, if you're doing a lot of things and you've got a lot of different fields and different objects, this is a way to sort of keep track of everything and make sure each object is being affected by the fields that you want it to affect. So that's the dynamic relationship editor. So then the last thing that I think we need to do is let's put some kind of a force on this to start making it swing. And we're just going to do it on the ball because then the chain will sort of react with it. And I think that the one we'll use, we're going to use a field, and then we're going to use the Newton field because that's sort of an in and out kind of movement. And I think that's going to help with sort of making the ball swing. So we'll create this Newton field. And then actually, I think I'm going to move it to the side and sort of bring it down near the ball. And let's see what happens when we play this. And it's not really doing a lot. It's sort of moving back and forth a little, but not enough to be interesting. So what we'll do is with this selected, we'll just go in the attribute editor and we'll turn up the magnitude. Let's make it, actually, let's see what happens when we turn it all the way up to 100. It's probably going to go crazy and freak out. But actually, that's not bad. You know what we could do? We could actually maybe move this towards the middle and see what that does. Now that makes it not want to do as well. That's something right there, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice if we could make it go back and forth a little bit better. Ooh, what am I doing? Here we go. So you could even set keyframes on this, or you could use a different field. Let's use a different field and see what happens. Let's use the air field, and let's see what that does. So again, it's not doing a lot right now. If we turn up the magnitude, let's see what it does. Ooh, that's sucking it clear up to the top. So, and again, it's all just a matter of trial and error, trying out the fields, seeing what you like. Maybe turbulence. Let's try turbulence. Because turbulence is sort of just a random movement. We'll move it down here inside the ball. And that's starting to move it a little. Let's turn up the magnitude. That's starting to be something, I think. Let's see what happens if we sort of move it down under the ball a little bit. No, that's not as good. Let's move it up a little higher. So yeah, you can start to get all kinds of interesting movement depending on what you're using as your field. So go ahead and play with this for a while. And then when you get something that you like, go ahead and bake your keyframes and save yourself a play blast and then turn it in. Thanks.